Hello and welcome to this month's Masterclass. So I'm really excited to talk to you today because this month's Masterclass is about one of my favourite topics, and it's on the theme that we had for the coffee club this February, and that is community. So we did a lot of fun community stuff this month. We had the Valentine's Day gift swap and over 60 businesses participated in that, swapping gifts, and that was really fun. And we also started the Letters to Girl Boss series, which is all about writing an open letter to the boss community that we have here with some words of inspiration or motivational advice. And I would love it if any of you would like to participate in that and maybe contribute a letter to the blog, and I'll put a link with more details below. If that's the kind of collaboration you'd like to join in with, you'd be very welcome. So to get on to the topic of today's masterclass, we're going to be talking about community and how you can really inspire and create a community around your own brand. So for those of you who haven't been in the coffee club for a while, my name's Sarah. I'm the one who is behind all of this, who's speaking to you today, and I run Creative and Coffee. In terms of my own business, I actually started out with a design business, predominantly designing book covers for self-publishing authors, and I created Creative and Coffee to basically make friends and be able to talk to fellow business owners about the kind of specific day-to-day problems that a lot of us experience, and sometimes you just need someone to almost kind of vent to in a way, someone who understands what you're talking about. And that's how this community really got started, and I'm really so very proud and very grateful to have this great community here that we do. And a lot of people ask me how I've gone about getting so much engagement and being able to have such a strong sense of community, around the brand. And I think in a lot of ways it's due to the fact that I don't really think of it as having a community around the brand as such. I more think of it as a place to generally hang out and chat to people. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I think is really important when starting your own community and also maintaining it. So let's talk about the fundamentals of building a community that your fans are really going to love and they're going to find value in, and they're going to be happy and really want to engage with you. The first thing I want to talk about is being yourself. So you might find it surprising that we're going to begin talking about community building by focusing on ourselves. I mean, after all, there's no I in team, and a community really should be all about the members and supporting them rather than making it all about us. And that's perfectly true. However, I wanted to start here because to my mind, community building is really about soul. And this is something that is very easy to lose or to get out of touch with online, because without that personal touch, that fundamental connection, the community is really going to be dead in the water. And whilst there's certainly a lot more to building an effective community than your own personal touch, without it, that community is really missing its foundation, it's missing that central support. So why is your personality so important? Well, do you ever watch a TV show, a movie, or pick up a book, and it might be the same genre as you usually like, it's well acted or well written, it's got a decent plot, but it's just meh. It's perfectly acceptable. If someone asked you why you didn't like it, or why it wasn't the best book you've ever read, you would probably struggle to come up with anything in particular. You'd struggle to find anything wrong with it. It's just that it didn't really light up your world. So you didn't really compulsively binge watch it, you didn't stay up to 3 a.m. reading the final chapter, and you didn't go out and recommend it to everyone up to and including random people on the street. You really didn't feel the need to connect with other fans to talk about it and discuss it, go to conventions to meet the people behind it, dedicate Tumblrs to it, or join forums to read about it. It was just fine. Maybe even a little bit forgettable. The thing is, for example, I'm sure I could write a perfectly good book about a wizard that goes to a boarding school, has interesting friends and magical adventures, but it still wouldn't be Harry Potter. It might even do okay, but it wouldn't really fulfill me, and it wouldn't really fulfill anyone who read it, and it would be really quickly forgotten. And this is the same for business. We're all so desperate to succeed, for all kinds of reasons. We want to be able to stay at home with our families more. We actually really badly need the money to, pay our rent. Or we really want to prove to all the people who said that we were crazy to start our own business that they were wrong. I mean, obviously we love what we do and we're passionate about it, and that's why we do it. But that need to succeed, particularly in terms of financial success, sometimes it compels us to do odd things. Like, with the best will in the world, sometimes we copy what other successful people are doing in the hope that we'll be successful too. And I don't mean outright plagiarising people, obviously we're not going to do that. But we might start to do things like selling courses because we've been told they are the holy grail of business income. We might start to brand ourselves with certain colours because they're super popular and people really seem to like them. We might design our websites to look like successful websites. And we might have sleepless nights worrying about building our email lists and deciding that we need thousands of Instagram followers for our business to work, and actually maybe we should start a podcast. Here's the thing, I'm not saying that wanting to sell courses or have lots of followers on your Instagram account or creating podcasts is wrong or that it's not good for business. That would just be wrong. But think of it this way. Say we have a course that's teaching you how to create a successful podcast that people are going to really love, and it's taught by someone who has their own very successful podcast. That person is trying to teach you the skills and give you the tools that you need to make your very own podcast. Just like, for example, Monet were to spring back to life and bequeath you the exact tools he used to create his famous water lilies paintings. If you were to use those tools to try and recreate water lilies and the Japanese bridge for yourself, you might do a really good job, but it would still just be a less good version of water lilies. However, if you use those tools to create a unique masterpiece of your own, well, that's something quite different. So to kind of get back to our point, what I'm trying to say is that it is oh so very easy to lose our own identities online. It's very easy to lose our own unique voices because we're trying to bend ourselves into certain shapes and fit into boxes to fill what already exists and what we view as being successful. Being different, being unique, these are things that cannot be easily taught. You can get lessons on how to do pretty much everything on the internet, but unless you're using these tools to create your own unique visions, you're always going to come out second best. And this is so true for communities. It doesn't mean that you can't have a Facebook group because everyone else has a Facebook group. It just means that you need to be using your Facebook group, or wherever it is that you're basing your community, to do something that no one else is doing. It doesn't need to be radically different. You don't need to come up with some really flamboyant, completely off the wall idea that has never been heard of before, although that would be pretty cool. But it just needs to be as unique as you are. It needs to be somewhere where you can display your own unique voice, and is just in some way a little bit different from what's out there already. I say this because people are drawn to people. There's a reason why when you do webinars and you do videos and things like that it has a much higher engagement rate, generally speaking, than some other methods of communication. And this is because you can see that person, you trust them, but you can also get a really good sense of their personality. And people don't want to be friends with a business. They don't want to be friends with a brand. They want to be friends with a person. And so your community really needs to have that unique personality there in order to draw people in and to ensure that they're going to engage with you. And before you say, well, there's nothing unique about me and there's nothing interesting about my personality, why would anyone want to be friends with me on the internet? You have your own friends in real life, right? So maybe ask them what it is about you that they really, really love, and what about you that is slightly different from everyone else. I know it sounds like a simple place to start, but you really don't need to reinvent the wheel here. You just need to be yourself, and that's going to draw the right people to you. Okay then, so I want to keep in mind what we've just talked about, so being unique, being ourselves, having that, natural voice that we have and not losing it. But let's look at something that's a little bit more practical, a little bit more actionable. So the way that I like to think about community channels, so this is all the different ways that people can interact with your brand, is by thinking about that friend that I know a lot of us have. I know that I have one like this, and we basically only communicate in one way. We only ever text each other, so I don't ever ring them, I don't really see them very often, we don't send funny cat memes to each other on Facebook, we don't tag each other on Instagram or anything like that. We just communicate via text. And it doesn't really feel like a really meaningful relationship. I mean, even if we were to text every week, it still would kind of not have that same connection as I do have with a lot of my other friends. And it's not just about consistency or how many times they text you. I mean, actually, if they started texting me every day, it would probably just get really annoying rather than deepening our relationship. Now think about a different friend. So every so often you call them up and you might have a long natter on the phone. You don't do it all the time, but occasionally. You text as well, and sometimes you send her links to articles she'd be interested in and YouTube videos that she would think was funny. And again, if you only communicated by sending YouTube videos or only communicated by sending, articles, it would be less meaningful. But if you have someone that you communicate with in a lot of different ways, it really builds that relationship. It makes it a lot more rounded, because you get to kind of see different sides of them. So when you have like a long phone call and you talk for a long time, you get a real sense of their voice and what's going on in their life, and lots of, information all up front. And then by text, you're just kind of keeping up that daily connection, so you're not losing touch with them, but you're not getting that massive information overload that you would when you have a long, chat on the phone. And then, when you're sending back and forth, funny pictures and stuff, it's just kind of light-hearted and it's kind of fun, and, it brings that kind of playful aspect of the relationship in. And this is the same with your community channels. So if, for example, you only had a Twitter account and nothing else, it might seem a little less encompassing and a little less well-rounded than communicating to your audience through different mediums. I mean, it helps keep things interesting, right? It also lets you deliver different experiences and opens up different facets of you and your business. Reading a blog post, for example, is quite the different experience than watching a YouTube video. Even if perhaps, it's the same content, it's quite a different experience. Now, I'm not saying that you have to hop on every single piece of social media and create content in every possible medium, but just consider how each platform that you are on can showcase different facets of your business and communicate with your community in different ways. So for example, you might have a weekly event on Facebook to encourage people to share their goals and support each other. On Instagram, you might have a hashtag where they can share photos of their perfect Sunday. And then on your website, you might have a 7-day course on how to live intentionally or something like that. So you can see how each of these aspects by themselves are great, but by combining them together, it makes them a full-bodied experience that is going to keep your audience engaged, but it's going to engage them in different ways and in different mediums, which is going to fulfill them and you in different ways. In the same way, when we think about perhaps teaching someone something, say through a video course, you might also want to provide them with a community to support them while they're going through their course, but also workbooks and maybe manuals as well to go along with your course for people who like to learn, from books, as well as the visual aspect of your videos. So just in the same way, you're giving them a single focus for an experience, but you're letting them experience it in different ways. And each element is building seamlessly to this whole experience. So don't think too much about having different platforms and different social media accounts, but think instead more about the different ways that you can engage your community and then use those platforms to achieve those ways. So if each of these facets are combined and linked to one central whole, the anchor point of your business, which is you, your uniqueness, your style, your thoughts, your vision, these elements will come together and into one cohesive whole to help you make up a multi-layered and meaningful relationship between you and your fans. So we've talked about the central cog of your brand, if you will, which is you and your personality. It's kind of what's drawing people in. And we've talked about how when building relationships, we're going to use these different facets and communicate in different ways to build to this cohesive whole. But in communicating with our audience, what do we want to be communicating? What is it we're communicating to them? Now, obviously, this is going to be very different depending on what kind of business you are and what it is that your product is, or if you've got a course, if you've got a service. But one thing is the same for everyone, and that is that you need to be providing value. So this is a thing that we hear a lot in the online business world. It's kind of become like a keyword, like this catchphrase that pops up, is that you must provide value to your audience. And you can't dispute it, it makes a lot of sense. However, the way that it's phrased often means that you immediately think about giving your audience a way to overcome some barrier they have in pursuit of financial success. And I just want to drop in at this point and give a general PSA to gently remind everyone, as easy as it can be to forget sometimes, because obviously as business owners we talk about finance, we talk about money, and we couch success sometimes almost completely in financial terms, not all the time, but quite a lot of the time. But we need to remind ourselves that value does not always mean money. It can be providing value to your audiences by giving them comfort or relaxation, knowledge, inspiration, ideas, or indeed just a space where they can come and talk about their own interests to other people who can understand them, whatever those interests may be. And they can literally be anything. People are really passionate and are interested in a lot of different things that we might ourselves not even understand, or we may not have even heard about. For example, I stumbled across a forum the other day when I was doing some market research. I'm not quite sure how I managed to get there, but it was kind of like, when you're on the internet and you just end up in a bit of the internet and you're like, how did I get here? But they were talking very passionately about a specific type of paint, in regard to painting a model of a robot which was connected to this really obscure Japanese show that I've never heard of. And I was just looking at that, and it really struck me that you can really create a community and or a business around pretty much anything online now. There are so many people out there with so many varied interests that you really don't have to be afraid about thinking, oh, well, I can only really talk about this because this is what's really popular. There is, of course, a difference between talking about things that your audience is interested in and wants to hear from you. The key really is that you can really talk about anything you want to talk about as long as you get in front of the right audience. I mean, obviously, if I now started talking to you about Japanese robots, most of you would probably leave very quickly, which is understandable. So whatever you're passionate about, as long as you can find the people who are also passionate about it, you can talk about it and you can make your business around it. And I just wanted to kind of drop that in, when we're talking about success and giving your audience value, to just remind you that it doesn't have to revolve around those big topics that are very prevalent on the internet right now. So we can measure and provide value in a lot of different ways. It doesn't matter what form you're providing it in, so don't feel constrained when thinking about what you can offer people. Don't necessarily think, oh, well, I have to offer them something that is going to help them be successful in terms of financial value, whether that's providing them information that they're going to go on and make success out of in terms of finances. And this mindset goes for products as well, because I think the problem or the issue that a lot of people have selling physical products is they think about their product in terms of whether people find it too expensive or not, what kind of position financially it's taking up within their target market. And whilst of course pricing can't be completely removed from the equation, there are a lot of other things that compel people to buy other than price. And actually, if you're doing your job kind of properly, price should really be actually one of the last things that they consider. So provide value to your community, and remember that value comes in a lot of different ways and a lot of shapes and forms. And so whilst you might want to provide value in one way that's very specific to your business, remember you can use these different outlets and these different facets of your brand to provide value in different ways as well that aren't so straightforward, and that will really help build up all those different facets into that one cohesive and very supportive whole. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is being consistent and present, and these are kind of again some buzzwords that we hear in the small business community quite a lot. And when people think about growing a community, it's really natural for their minds to jump straight to the marketing and the getting the word out there and drawing people in. But firstly, if you spend more time promoting your community than engaging with it, you're going to end up with a revolving door of members, which means your community might be growing, but it will be perpetually filled with new members, or the majority of which will be new members who don't have yet the strong connection to the community that you would like. And secondly, you would actually be surprised how by engaging with your community, the act of engaging with it helps grow it. So for example, the Creative and Coffee Instagram grew very much considerably quicker than my first Instagram I had for my design business, for a couple of different reasons, but most notably because I spend a lot of time on Instagram engaging with my audience. As I said, in the intro, I basically Creative and Coffee so I could hang out with people and chat to them online, so I ended up doing a lot of engagement on Instagram just because I was chatting to friends and things. And even when Creative and Coffee got a little bit bigger and I couldn't spend as much time reaching out to people, I did make a conscious decision to keep in touch with all the followers who commented on my profile, not just by replying to their comments, but actively hopping over to their accounts about once a week to support their accounts. So I wasn't visiting new accounts, I wasn't going out there, in the initial stages I was, but as the account grew, I stopped visiting new accounts, but I was visiting accounts that were already following me. But the Instagram was still growing quite considerably, and people were starting to actively refer to me as an expert in social media engagement because of the commitment of my followers, which I was very amazed by, a little bit surprised, well, quite a lot surprised by actually deep down, but I was amazed by this and I was very, very genuinely touched by it as well. So through the consistent activity on the account by myself and by my followers and by their very kind enthusiasm, they ended up recommending me to their own followers, and the account still grew, and it grew at a very sustainable rate where everyone was still connected and it really felt part of a community. So it wasn't growing by like thousands or anything, but it was a very sustainable rate where I could still build relationships with people. And further proof of this, and it does pain me quite considerably to say it, is that recently, due to sort of various obligations and kind of life getting in the way in general really, I sacrificed the time that I spent engaging with my followers on Instagram, and I devoted that time to other projects and clients that I've been working with. And of course I still replied to comments and reached out to those who cropped up in my newsfeed, but I was no longer making a really intentional effort to visit my supporters' profiles every week. I was just kind of, replying to their comments, and if they cropped up in my newsfeed when I happened to be on Instagram, of course I'd say hello. But I wasn't making that intentional effort. I didn't have it scheduled into, my daily plan or anything like that. And eventually I began to notice that the growth of the account had slowed quite dramatically. So when you read tips about posting consistently and being present on social media, a lot of people think, well, I do post consistently, I post every day, and I reply to everyone's comments on, who come to the Instagram profile. And that's great, and that's a really, really good start. But I think to truly make a great community, you need to go that step further and really have a genuine and active interest in what's going on with members of your community as individuals, not just as a whole. Is this time consuming? Absolutely. Authentic communication is not something that can really be automated. However, in my opinion, especially for me, my own fulfillment and for the health of my business, it's something that's absolutely worth the time to me. Whether that's something that you want to do or can do and set aside the time for is really up to you. But I just wanted to talk about that because I know I see articles, and I totally agree with them, where they say, comment on other people's profiles and make sure to reply to people's comments who comment on yours. And of course you should do that, but I think it's important to talk about it in terms of intention, because if you're just commenting on other people's profiles and replying to comments on yours because you think that's what you should be doing, there's not really that intention behind it, that genuine interest in your followers. And that's not to say that you don't have a genuine interest in your followers, but you really need to follow that interest up in a really specific and active way in order to really build that genuine soul of your community that we were talking about earlier. So just like friendship really, a community requires dedication, a genuine interest in the happiness of its members, and if you are careful, considerate, and generally interested in giving value, no matter what form that value comes in, then your community is really going to appreciate the effort and show their appreciation, sometimes in ways that you might not expect, and will really genuinely delight you. It's not a marketing technique that you can implement and just sit back and running on autopilot, and it's not something you can just try out and do on occasion. It does require commitment and time, and whether that is something that is really going to be suitable for your business is something that you are going to have to decide for yourself. For me, my community is really the whole point of my business. I wouldn't actually, quite frankly, be interested in running my business at all if I didn't have that community. It would really just lose all interest for me in a lot of respects, because the warmth and the friendship and the genuine commitment that we have in the community is really what makes it worthwhile for me. So that's how I see running a community. You may notice today that I've talked less about specific business actions that you can take right away, less so than I usually do in most of our masterclasses. And the reason for this is that I genuinely believe that without the soul and the love of its owner, a community is unlikely to succeed, no matter what quote-unquote marketing techniques that you're using for it. So I'm going to draw this masterclass to a close. Thank you very much for listening and for being part of the club. As always, feel free to drop me any questions either in the comments or just drop me an email. If you have any suggestions or topics that you want to be covered in our next masterclass, just let me know. And as I said before, don't forget we are still looking for contributors to the Letters to Girl Boss series. But until then, I will bid you good night, and I will see you next time.